Hey everyone, how's it going? I wanted to skip the intro on this one because I'm super excited to talk about all the cool stuff in this script. What we're doing in this one is automatically doing event remediation whenever we have issues with the DB. And we see that I've already got some of these built out. I want to show you a few of these before we get started building this complete script so you can see what I'm talking about. What we're doing in this script is taking in an alert from a Datadog trigger that lets us know that there's a problem. Then we can do automated actions to resolve that problem using WayScript. For example, let's say that we get a Datadog alert that lets us know that we have a lot of running queries on our DB. What we can do using WayScript is when we get this Datadog alert, we can automatically trigger some SQL code to let us go and grab all of the running processes. Then we can create a table and then send ourselves an email with them. Or instead, we could find ones that we don't need and automatically terminate them. Let's talk about that and a lot more in this video. Like I said, this will be a longer tutorial, so feel free to use the timestamps down below to skip around and see parts of the video that are interesting to you. Kicking us off, let's go ahead and create a new script and we'll rebuild this from scratch. If you'd rather have the full script already typed out for you so you can just follow along, the link for that will be in the description and you can just clone it to your own account and set it up there. Let's talk about the first function in that script that we already saw. The first function was using a Boto3 API to automatically do actions on that DB. This is honestly pretty awesome because we can automatically do any event that we can imagine using that Boto3 API and just use it seamlessly inside of WayScript. So we'll set up a Datadog trigger letting us know that there's some problem. This trigger could be anything that we wanted. For example, let's just say that we have some instance of an issue where we need to execute SQL code using Boto3. Turning this trigger on means that anything that we create below this function head will be executed upon getting a Datadog trigger. Because of that, we might get many Datadog triggers, and we don't want to just run code every time we get one. Instead, we only want to run this code when the issue specifically applies to that DB. So what we can do is create an if statement. Inside WayScript, this is super easy to do. Now we see that we can put whatever statement we want here using Python syntax. This Datadog trigger, whenever it executes, will give us a struct that we can view down here. I'll go ahead and send through an event which will trigger a monitor and activate this webhook. So we can see that variable populate down here in the bottom right. All right, so I just created some havoc over in my applications DB. So we should see a Datadog monitor fire, and we do. We see this variable is created down here called event. We'll open that event struct up, and we see that we get a lot of information about what that event was. We got back in the title, something big happened, and we can use that title to programmatically select the action that we want to happen using it. So in a Python step, what we can do inside this Python step is we can pull that variable in of event right here and then pull out that key of title. Then we'll create a new variable using it. So we'll do something like title will be equal to variables event. This is how we access WayScript variables. So we have this WayScript variable over here called event, variables event, and then to pull out a key from a struct, we can just say get and then the title of that key, which is title. We'll pull in title. Then we can write that back to WayScript by saying variables title is equal to the Python variable, a title. Awesome. Executing that, we should have title pulled out, which we see my Datadog trigger ran again with a different event called demo events. And that's why we have a different string there. Sweet. So we've got our title, and now we just need to do our conditional. We can say something like, we'll do something big in title, pulling that pill into this conditional statement. If something big is in our title, then we can do our action. Since we're using Boto3 in this example, we can just pull it in and then start writing code. To use Boto3, we'll import the libraries. So import Boto3. I'll increase the size of this. And if you're following along, you already have this code. But if you don't, then it's posted on GitHub. I'll pull it up right now. So we can just copy it and paste it in. All these examples are on our GitHub here, where we have different event remediation techniques inside this folder that you can use. Ours is this DB one, and let's pull in this execute SQL statements.py, and this is the code. We see here that we have 2 red pills, and red pills just means that we can't figure out what this variable is referring to. That's because we haven't created these yet. These are secret values, and we'll want to include these in our .secrets file over here to the left. So we have our key ID and our key secret, and where you get these from are your IAM User Management credentials. And if you need help with that, there's a link down below that will help you out. I already have those, so I'll just go ahead and put those into my secrets manager. Once those are placed inside your .secrets file, they should no longer be read in here once we sync our script. But once we run it, they should populate as blue because they're string values. Now, what we can do, if you're following along, is we can build our client in this function here. What this client does is just build a client that we can use resources from AWS with. We see that our client here is referencing RDS, and this is where your AWS DB most likely is. If it's somewhere else, you can just create a different string here and create a different client. We have this RDS client, and now we can call it to access RDS resources. And here's where it gets pretty sweet. We can actually just run SQL code inside of this execute statement using the RDS client. So we could automatically do whatever SQL query you wanted to. You can put that in here and then run this each time you get a Datadog trigger. I don't want to dive too far into SQL in this video because I have a bunch to show and I don't want this video to be forever long. We already seen how we can do the Boto3 API to automatically trigger SQL statements. Now let's look at the next function. We'll create a function by clicking this add function button at the top, and this time we'll want to do the same thing. We'll pull in that Datadog trigger, turn it on, get the output, and then we'll copy this Python code where we get the title. We see some events are coming in, and that's why it's triggering over here to the left. Now we have this title. We'll do a conditional again, and we'll make it the same thing as we did here. In real life, you'll want to make different conditional statements, so when different events happen on Datadog, you actually execute an automated event remediation step that applies to that Datadog alert. But in this example, I just want to show you how it works. In this one, let's imagine that we get a Datadog alert that tells us we have a bunch of running queries on our DB. Let's pull all running queries using the SQL module. The SQL module assumes that your DB runs off SQL and publicly accessible. Therefore, we can write queries against it if we want to. I've already connected it, and if you need help connecting your DB, the link for that video is down below as well. We'll choose that connected DB and we'll view the code. This code's on GitHub as well, and it's not a lot, but less is more sometimes. So we have show full process list, and we can run this through our SQL query whenever we get that Datadog alert. Running this to our connected DB, we get back this table. What we can do is pull in all of these processes that we want. So column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And what these are different running processes on our DB. If we had an issue where we had too many, we could go through, find ones that we didn't want, and then terminate them automatically, depending on what the query was. And we get back that query over here. So if you know you have a query that eats up a lot of your CPU whenever it runs, and you need to kill it because it's non-necessary, you can do this pretty easily. We have these query results, and in my example, I just want to create a table to view these and then pass them on to someone else. We'll do that using Python, so we'll pull in a Python step, and I'll copy and paste some code in here as well. This is on GitHub too, and all I'm doing is pulling in those variables programmatically, then creating a table using pandas, and writing that table back to WayScript. We can see the code here, creating this dictionary, and then programmatically pulling these variables that will populate over here, putting them in a dictionary, and then passing them into an HTML table, which will become a variable too. Running this, we'll see all of that populate over here in the right. So these columns came from my SQL step, which we imported. And then here is my HTML that I'm creating from this data frame. So back in our tree, we have a Gmail step where we can send ourselves an email. I'll just send one to myself for this example. And then in the email body, we can pull in that HTML. Now we'll run this manually, but in the future, it'll be ran conditionally depending on that Datadog alert. Okay, going over to my email and viewing that email, here is what it looks like. So we see that it's not the prettiest, but you could definitely format it better using that pandas data frame. I just want to show you just enough to get it working. We have all of these different steps and the amount of time that it takes to run them. This is great because I can see from this one simple email that my event scheduler is just waiting for an event because it has an empty queue. So I know there's no issues going on there, or hopefully no issues going on there. Awesome. So we know how to view all running queries now. Let's talk about how we can view some important information about our DB in a third function. We'll create that function, that Datadog step in the same way, and then the Python step and the conditional. This is a good starting point. I'll just go ahead and pull in an SQL step so we can query our database by using a statement that gets the HILL. I'll link some resources down below for this too, but essentially the larger it is, the more potential that your DB is struggling in some type of way. We'll paste it in and I'll zoom in so we can see it. We'll get this information back by clicking the run button. And here we have all of this information. It's quite a lot, so you'll want to do maybe some regular expressions to get the information that you want. For me, I'm just worried about the size that this trends to. So I'll import this and I'll call it HILL. Once I have that, I'll close out of it. And actually, we just want the first matching row. So I'll go in and run this again and make sure I just get that one entry. So now I have a variable called hill that has all that information. Since I'm just curious about how this trends over time, I just want to see a simple metric of the size of this variable. If it gets too big, then I'll know I'll have a problem, and all this information here will tell me what my problem is. Going in and pulling a Python step in, we'll pull that in, and then we'll say something like hill will be equal to the WayScript variable of hill, which we just created in that previous step. And now size, very simply, can just be the length of hill. There's definitely better ways to do this, but this is just a rudimentary way to get the size of this hill variable. You could definitely be more precise with this, but simple is sometimes better. Now I'll say variables, hill size, creating that WayScript variable, is equal to size. Running this, I believe we should get back a number in the 4000s, which we do. What this means is we could put in some logic where if this number gradually increases over time, we know that we might have a problem inside of our DB. Awesome. So I know I moved very quickly through this video, but I wanted to show you as much as I could in it. There's so much database remediation that we can do using Datadog, and I wanted to give you some brief overview of different processes we can do with it. Datadog and WayScript are great tools to use in combination to do these sorts of actions, because what it means is we can automatically do event remediation whenever some bad event happens, and that's when you need it the most. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know and we'll get back to you. Until next time.